I just saw The Exorcist for the first time.
The power of Christ compels you!
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
That's right, the 1973 horror classic The Exorcist. I had never seen it before. Been out for 50 plus years. Everyone and their mother has told me how it is the scariest movie ever made. I gotta say, I personally am somewhat disappointed in that. I was expecting the scariest thing that's ever come across my television screen when I watched it, and it was everything but. Now, I'm not trying to say it wasn't a good movie. I'm not trying to say I don't appreciate the fact that it was one of the first movies in its genre to have the effect it did on people. But for people to still to this day say that that is one of the scariest movies ever made, they are only living off of the fact that they saw that movie years ago, probably scared the bejesus out of them, and then they never saw it again. Because there's no way that if you watch horror movies nowadays, possession horror movies even, that you're saying that that is still the scariest movie of all time. It just, I can't buy it. I can't accept that. Now, again, I understand the aspect of it was first in that at its time, like it wasn't something that people were used to seeing. People went to see it, they got the crap scared out of them. I mean, I remember people telling me when I was a kid and I would ask adults, what's the scariest movie they've ever seen? And they would all say The Exorcist. And they would also all say, or at least a majority of them would say, don't watch it. Bad things are going to happen. Like that's how much it screwed with people's heads. But I would think that someone who watches that movie, right, and feels that way, they probably would never watch it again. So I think you got a lot of people who just naturally, oh, that's the scariest movie I've ever seen, and they probably don't watch other horror movies because it's probably not their bag. That was like a cultural phenomenon. People were going to watch that movie and then they were freaking getting the crap scared out of them. Maybe that was the reason people decided not to want to watch horror movies. But either way, I don't think it holds up well over time because a lot of the stuff that is out now, I think, is a lot better. A lot. When I say a lot better, I mean it scares you more, right? The effects, what you see on screen, is just so much has evolved so much. Now they were way ahead of their time. Like the makeup on Linda Blair was phenomenal. Linda Blair's acting was incredible in that movie. The story was a solid story, a little bit slow, in the beginning. To me, I think, you know, probably 4/5 of that movie is too slow. There's good buildup, but it just for it to be a scary movie, I mean, I think there's too many gaps. You literally have to be scared more about the possession factor of it than what you're actually seeing on screen. Because once you get, the first time you see Linda Blair all, cut up like with the possession face or makeup and all that, it's oh wow, but you get used to it pretty fast, right? The what bothered me, if anything, in that movie was the scene where she starts stabbing, her area down there and, then takes the mom and puts the face in there. That I was like, "Oof." That was, and not because it scared me, just I don't enjoy seeing that kinda stuff, and, I've seen some pretty wild movies as well. There was a time when I was really into, like, the Japanese horror flicks, and man, let me tell you, those will make you think twice about watching horror movies. And then there's a scene with the projectile vomit, which again, I don't like to see that kind of stuff. So it has nothing to do with it being scary. It's more of just not wanting to see someone puking, right? So with that said, why doesn't it hold up, right? Like, is it just that the movies have gotten so much better? I think story wise, the movies just there's nothing special about them. The movies that come out now that are possession based, right? I think they kind of just regurgitate the same old story, but visually I think they are it has evolved so much that I don't think that that film still can hold up to them. Deliverance is one of the more recent ones that came out on Netflix, and visually, that's a really good movie. Visually, how it looks, story-wise, I mean, I said it's nothing. It's a different take on the Possession movie, which I thought was good, but it's still the same, basically the same thing as all the other ones. But visually, I thought they did a very good job with the effects. I think Glenn Close in that movie, her face to me is more frightening than looking at Linda Blair in The Exorcist. I don't know, it's because Linda Blair was so makeup heavy in that, which, like I said, they did a very good job, and Glenn Close was a little bit more. I mean, obviously, you could tell it wasn't they added effects and makeup and all that, but it almost looked like an evil human that was more believable than Linda Blair with all the makeup on her face. And I think because we've seen and again, I hadn't seen The Exorcist, but I've seen her in plenty of other movies where they try to mimic The Exorcist, and you kinda just become used to it, right? And it doesn't bother bother you as much. But I've seen The Conjuring, for example. The Conjuring spooked the hell out of me. Like legitimately spooked the hell out of me. That was probably this for me personally. That was one of the scariest movies I've seen in a long time when I watched it, and felt that I was expecting that. That's what I was expecting to feel when I watched The Exorcist for the first time, and I did not feel that, especially with all the hype that people, had put into it. I mean, if you look on the internet and you look up a list of what is the scariest movie ever made, Exorcist is constantly in the top 5, a lot of times 1 and 2, and I feel like these are people that might have seen it a long time ago, and then they never saw it again, and it's living in their head essentially as the scariest movie ever, but they haven't seen it now compared to other movies that have come out, and I think if they had, it would have lost some of that luster as far as, being the scariest movie ever made, that it gets credit for that a lot, and I have to disagree with that. If you ask my mom right now, "What's the scariest movie ever made?" She would tell you The Exorcist. But my mom doesn't watch scary movies. She watched it one time, probably never seen another scary movie since then because she saw that movie and it scared her. But does that mean it's still the scariest movie ever made? No, I mean, it was the scariest movie made for its time, but as, time progresses, I don't think it stacks up with some of the more modern possession horror movies. Whereas if we take something like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, to me, that still holds up to this day against more current slasher films as far as horror movies go. I think that is one of the ones that has stood the test of time so well, and I think it's because it wasn't effect driven, wasn't it was more of something that could potentially happen to anybody, right? Like it's human malice, right? Not possession, not anything extra supernatural, right? And I think that always resonates and is harder to top because now when you see movies that are made that are slasher flicks, they look very polished, they look very, very clean. And for a slasher flick, I think that grittier, grimier look that Texas Chainsaw Massacre had when it came out just stands the test of time, right? Because it is supposed to be a filthy experience like that, right? And I think that's the difference in that. I mean, look at the Last House on the Left, the Wes Craven one. That movie was first off, it's not a slasher flick. It's kind of a home invasion type of movie, right? I don't know what the subgenre for that would be called, home invasion, I guess. But that movie to me is horrific. Like everything that goes on, even the way that the family defends themselves, just is something else. And if I were to think of movies that are in that same genre, one there isn't that many, but Straw Dogs, which came out, or in that era, was pretty good. Then they remade Straw Dogs and they remade The Last House on the Left, but they stayed so true or as close as they could to those originals that they are very good remakes, and I think those stand the test of time. But if you talk about new movies that kind of fit that mold, the only other one that I would tell you would be The Strangers, and that's because that's because it's hard to do that concept over and over without kind of just feeling very repetitive. So you don't wouldn't have that many people in that many movie makers making that type of movie. So it's stood the test of time because one, there isn't that much competition, and then those are so story driven. Those are it's not a special effects thing. It's not a makeup thing. It's not a suspend reality or belief type of thing. It is a physical people that could come into your house and wreak havoc, right? Whereas the possession genre, it depends on special effects. It depends on the story. It depends on what you personally believe, right? If you don't believe in any of that kind of stuff, it's not going to matter to you, right? If you do believe in it, and to me, those movies actually are technically like, look, to me, a movie like The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a movie like Last House on the Left, Straw Dogs, to me, that's scary because that could actually, I feel like there's a good chance of that happening. Not saying that the possession stuff can't happen, but I feel it's more likely that the other stuff would happen. But at the same time, I don't think those are as scary as a good possession movie because at the end of the day, those are human beings, and I would feel that it's not as scary because at least I always have a fighting chance. Whereas with the possession horror movie, I don't know what the hell is going on. If that happens, what the hell am I supposed to do? Like I feel like you're in the middle of the ocean without a life raft or a boat or anything. You're just no man's land. You don't have anything to reference. And how are you supposed to come out victorious? You don't even have a fighting chance, essentially, right? And I think that's why, to me personally, those movies are scarier. But The Exorcist was just too slow paced, I think, to try to bring the scares right for me. And then also the story was so heavy on. They did a very good job in crafting and making sure everyone understood everything. I don't think that anyone who watches that movie can say, "Oh, I was caught off guard by this. I don't understand this." They did a very good job explaining all that. But when it came to the actual scary parts, like I said, it was more gross than scary. and I don't recall at all any jump scare for me at that moment. I'm not saying the movie has to have jump scares, but again, everything else that I seen afterwards just feels scarier. It just, like I said, this one didn't stand the test of time because possession movies, they're always boom, 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 cranking those out. I feel like there was actually a few years ago, there was a period where every freaking year we're getting like 2 or 3 new ones. And, this saturates the market, especially when a lot of them visually look better than the original. I think it's hard for it to stand the test of time. Again, glad I saw it. Wasn't impressed because of the hype. If people hadn't hyped it up how they did, then I probably would have been a little bit more receptive of it, would have liked it a lot more, but I just can't justify calling it the scariest movie ever or one of these scariest. I mean, it wouldn't even crack my top 10, honestly. And I think that just because I've seen so many scary movies by the time I actually got around to seeing it, and there's been so many good scary movies that have come out since then, horror movies, that to me, it wasn't the new, unforeseen, or unseen experience that a lot of people, when they originally saw that movie, experienced. So I mean, I recommend everyone watch it because it's part of horror movie history. It's iconic. I think everyone should watch it. Shouldn't have taken me this long to watch it. Probably should have watched it my early 20s, maybe late teens, just to kind of see this horror movie that, affected so many people, or that left this type of impression on so many people. But yeah, there's no way it's a top 10 horror movie in my opinion. I don't think it cracks the top 10. It's a good horror movie, but not top 10. It's interesting to see how movies evolve over time. 100% interesting. And again, I really think this one just couldn't stand the test of time. It's not like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which slasher movies, they make them and they get goofier and goofier and goofier, it seems. Whereas the possession movies, their whole goal is to scare the bejesus out of you and get darker and darker and darker. So I think that is a big difference when it comes to what an actual horror movie is, or what is scary, right? Let me know in the comments, right? If you think The Exorcist still holds the test of time and it's still one of the scariest movies ever made. When was the last time you saw it, right? That's another good question. If you saw this movie back in the 80s and you haven't really kind of re-seen it, I mean, if you rewatch it, it might change. You might change your opinion, especially if you watch all the other horror stuff that's come out. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. I'd love to get people's opinion on this. How scary is The Exorcist really? Because I definitely don't agree with it being on the top 10 list, even a top 5 list, one or two on any list of the scariest movie ever. So again, appreciate you guys tuning in. If you guys could smash a like on the video, help us tremendously. If you guys subscribe to the channel, that'd be greatly appreciated so you guys stay up to date with all of our content. I'm Nathan. This is 24 Chambers of Film, and that was my reaction to watching The Exorcist for the first time and not thinking it was quite up to snuff. Until next time.